But the idea is we probably do some studio suites, some 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, some ability to combine some rooms together. You know, full kitchen, everything fully laid out, decorated, room services. You have garages underneath the buildings for be able to keep a car, but fully catered. So our target market, we've mentioned a little bit about corporations, and one of the things that got us in the first place is was that there are corporations, they might bring people in, they might go golfing for a week or do something like that with their people, or tie something to going to Colorado in the winter and people can go skiing, or tie different things like that. And we see that fishing is another one of those type of things that people could do. Where people come up and spend some time at a corporate level doing that, where corporations would own, this would be a corporate entertaining area for them. And city-wise, it's great because that would bring it's new people coming in that would come back in and fill back into the city and exploring the city and using restaurants and going to shops and things like that. We see private ownership as being another area. It might be people that live in there full time. It could be people that live in Detroit and come in for the weekend, or live in Columbus and come for a week. We see weekly or monthly rentals, and those could be tied on there with the idea of timeshares, with the idea of there are also vacation timeshares. You could have a vacation timeshare in Colorado to be skiing. You could be doing the same thing. This could be part of a group like that. It is another option where people would trade off their time to come to here and spend a week here. Guided tours. You know, if you're going fishing in Florida and you're going to be in the Keys, you could look up and find Orvis website and say, okay, if I want to go fishing, I want to get a guide and I want to get set up and learn how to do that. We'd like to tie this into a group like that, where this is their preferred area in the region to go fishing. Guides are all set up. It's using them to do some marketing too, and then also looking at it as something that's a spa getaway. And if you look at the area from if you look at the 100-mile radius or so of right here. There's not that many places to go away for a weekend, as if you wanted a retreat weekend to go and be pampered and have it done very, very well. So this slide here, we're looking at the idea was on the sponsors, and saying if we were to say we were to have a boat line, say we had Pursuit as our boat line, or Yamaha as our engines, we'd like them to for the fleet of boats that we're going to have here, we'd like that to be our sponsor. Their boats and whatever engine would go along with that. Same thing with the fishing poles, the lures, everything that would go along with that to be dealt with sponsors that are sponsoring their product to be here. And so what that would guarantee us is the goal isn't necessarily to go out and buy all the boats and buy a bunch of different kind of boats. The idea is to always have the best of every product that's here. Your rods are always going to work. The boat's always going to start. The boat's always clean. So if we can, our goal would be to work with and try to find the boat sponsors that would come in. So when we do have big events, the Pursuit, if they wanted to host an event, they're going to do their event here. They're going to come and show off their boats here. Somebody wants to buy a boat here, they're going to come here. They'll put them up for the weekend here and use this as a facility, as a marketing for all these groups that we're looking at using too. But it also guarantees us to have very, very high quality product here too. Besides just the things that we would be doing with the lodge itself, and as you mentioned a little bit, but the idea is if this is going to, if a concept like this would work, the rest of the things in the community need to happen too. Mike's been very strong at hosting events and figuring out how to get events to happen and to raise awareness of the communities. We feel like that the lodge itself would raise a lot of awareness of the area. But tying that in with different events that would happen here, we're doing an amphitheater on the property, doing music events with that. You already have some great festivals too. Tying in with those and coordinating with the things that happen in the city, but also adding more things that could happen here. It could be a wine event that's hosted here, and the banquet facility is laid up, with all the different wine vendors and from the region here, and people are coming and spending time doing that, feeding back into town. So. Quite a bit of things that I think that could happen feeding back into the community. It'd be very, very important for the success of the project. With winter activities, we'd like to do some things here, so it's not just this isn't just a summer and spring and early fall product. Looking at things like doing tree lighting or ice sculpting or besides the getaway weekends that we talked about. There's a lot of other things that we think we could do that would be able to take this and make it a 12-month destination point, rather than just the fishing. So the PR and media, we talked about a couple things here that we want to brand it more than just a local region here. We feel like this could be something that can be branded a lot larger, on a lot bigger scale. People that might be living in North Carolina that love to fish and hear about this, that they'd be seeing about this. They'd see it through from different venues, whether it be national exhibits that would be going on, taping of national shows. There's a lot of fishing shows and things like that we feel like we could probably do here, out of this region. Food Network and doing different things like that. All the sponsors that we have having their promotions, letting them promote it too. So using this as a way to promote the region and the events here, not just a particular building that we would build on here, but try and say, come to Port Clinton, come experience the downtown, come go shopping, going back to that New England town atmosphere that we want to have. That's all part of the reason why somebody would come here. One of the things that we looked at, and we talked about this too, was besides just those parts, is saying if people were to come here, you have, as a family, you have Cedar Point, you have all the attractions that are around Cedar Point here. That's a great asset for here. And using this place as to say, instead of going to Cedar Point and then going to Port Clinton, let's go to Port Clinton, and while we're here for one of the days, let's go over to Cedar Point and spend an afternoon and go hang out there. But if you could bring a family up here and spend a week up here, the kids could go to Cedar Point one day, they could go to a water park. If they don't want to fish every day, there's boats there, there's water skiing, we could have jet skiing, learn how to sail for a week, learn how to jet ski, learn how to water ski, go up to the islands and look at the Glacier Roofs on Kelly's Island, spend a day up there, go to Put-in Bay. Use all the different things around here as an asset, but this as the focal center point of all those things. So when we looked at the property here, one of the things that we did is taking a look at the this is the mouth here, Derby Pond's over here. And what we looked at doing was saying, if we were to do something in this region right through here as the lodge piece, come in, there's some docking that's already set up a little bit right now, but go ahead and turn that into a larger level of docking to support the lodge. It's not something where we want to turn into a full marina. There's plenty of marinas around. That's not our goal. The goal is just to support what we're doing here right now, and possibly do maybe some day docking for people to come in and to jump into town and to hang out. But that's kind of what this area is showing here. There are some walkways that are coming around Derby Pond. We're looking at keeping those, all the public walkways all the way back around. We'd like to see that brought back into the town and ideally end up at Madison, going all the way there. Would be a great goal. We're showing keeping the pond, keeping all this as public area all the way up through here. All this is public area through here. Keeping maybe an outdoor amphitheater. Maybe it's more of an actual structure that could be there. Maybe have a gazebo cover on it so to be able to do events there, and still be able to do events through here. But these to be set up really as streets, not as I mentioned, not as a gated community, but really just as streets and a continuation of the streets that are across the way here. We threw a couple images of what kind of the character or the feel a little bit we were thinking this would be. We're not thinking it's not a 7-story building, it's a 3-story or 4-story. We don't know exactly what that's going to be yet, but it's something more in scale in line with the heights of the current downtown buildings. They're 3-story. So a couple images that we had just showing the scale of the pieces, the entrance pieces, kind of the view across the water line that we would see. When I mentioned the streets, we want them to be walkable area, the whole area to be walkable. Showing that this is they're small scale walkable streets, trying to keep the cars out of the areas, off the from being the main street. So all you see is cars. When we want to see front porches, we want to see people as we walk down these. And then really developing the boardwalk, the concept of a boardwalk. And taking that boardwalk all the way from the up from the point there all the way across that marina area that we're talking about. That's kind of what we see as being the view of that as you're walking down by the marina. And ideally on ours, we'd like to see that go all the way through and go all the way all the way to Madison, or even further if we could, would be spectacular. So it is something that would encourage you to go from here. If we can collect everything, funnel Madison, that means now we can get down Madison. And that's what our goal is, to see people to go up there and funnel back and forth. But that's kind of the character that we'd be looking at for that. So good, I think we're open to questions.
Okay, members of council. Any questions? Don't ask me at once.
First of all, I want to welcome and thank you for coming to Port Clinton. I know when we went to visit Worcester, there was a great deal of discussion about how many communities are looking to see you folks in their communities. So I want to thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts with us. When you first made a presentation like this in Worcester, maybe you did, maybe you didn't, what goals did you have for Worcester? And over the past 10 years, how did those goals, if they did they change to reach what we saw in Worcester a couple weeks ago? How did that process work out over the 10 years?
That's an interesting question. And before I answer it, I wanted to introduce Neil Codio. And Neil has been a tremendous help in all the communities we get involved with. He really helps us with marketing and developing strategies that create an interest and an awareness of the communities we get involved in. I forgot to introduce him before. But anyways, to answer your question, I think probably one of the biggest things we did was to create downtown living. When we went to Worcester, the buildings looked very similar. They were in need of a lot of repair and create the kind of images that David's drawn here. But the second and third floors were vacant. And the only people living in those were maybe one step above homeless, and they were just really depressing. We were able to start renovating those second and third floors, and we have market rate loft living now in the downtown. And by having people living in the downtown, you got people walking around. It becomes a safer area, because if you have feet on the street, you have less chances of things going wrong in the area. Those loft apartments have led to condominiums. We developed 12 condominiums in the downtown, and we have almost half of them spoken for, and we haven't even marketed. We just opened our model about a month ago, and some of the visitors that came down were able to view those. And it just it's like a snowball effect. Once somebody's successful, somebody else then gets an idea about a business. And the same thing with the renovations of the buildings. Once we start on a couple of these buildings, other people will see what can be done. And it's like you don't paint your house until your neighbor paints his house and say, hey, it looks good. And the same thing I think will happen here. Other people will take ownership. And I wanted to address one other issue, even though the question hasn't come up. When we were asked to look at some of these buildings, we can make these buildings look great in the downtown. But just because you have a nice looking building doesn't mean somebody's going to rent it. We have to have activity. And that's what led to the idea of developing something sustainable on the waterfront that could create jobs and bring in a steady stream of people that would be looking for other activities. As David suggested, there's so many other places that people can visit for a day. If they go away for a week, you can go to Cedar Point, you can go to the water parks. There's so many other things. You can go over to the islands that you can do, and they could stay here. When they're here, what are they going to do in the evening? They'll walk into town. They have an afternoon free if their husband's attending some kind of seminar in the lodge with his company. They can walk into town and do things, and that's what's going to make the businesses downtown, the types of niche businesses that will be attracted to the downtown, successful. Anyways, I'm sorry, there's a long way. I didn't answer all your questions. I think I answered your question.
That's okay, thank you. Follow up to that, what similarities and differences do you see between Port Clinton and Worcester? And are there certain challenges that you see germane to both locations?
Well, there are some differences. Sure, there's differences. You have the waterfront here. You have the fishing. Worcester has a college. And so there's just different things that would attract, and I think what we have to do is be aware of how do we build on those things. I don't think it's an idea of reinventing yourself. I think it's just identifying what is going to work and how to build on what you already have.
One more and then I promise I'm done for now. Linda gave me the mic, I'm sorry. One of the earlier slides you talked about, and I can't remember the exact terminology, but a creation of a third-party entity that would collect properties and then look to resell them. Could you explain that in a little greater detail? Maybe explain what Worcester did with their CIC?
Yeah, Worcester was very dynamic in creating a CIC, which is a Community Investment Corporation. And it's worked out very well in attracting businesses and also not just trying to enhance the downtown by creating methods and vehicles that can help in that, but it creates a steady pool of money that keeps recirculating through that they can attract other businesses. They've used it for manufacturing. It's worked so well in Medina. We introduced the people in Medina to the Worcester people that set this up. It's taken about 2 years now for Medina to get it set up, and they're going to be doing probably their first project will be involved in that as well. But it's a mechanism. For example, if somebody has a piece of property, they can donate it to the CIC. The tax credits they get, and again, I'm not an accountant, you have to talk to the accountants about this, but the way I understand it is that they can get, the donation can be more than they probably would be able to sell it for, and the tax advantage to them could be much greater. And again, tax people can share how that would work. But then the CIC then has the property. The property owner has benefited from giving it to donating it, and then the CIC can sell it to a developer, get the money from that, and use those money to create other ways to attract businesses into the community. Either no interest loans or low cost loans. Money will be repaid. But as we move along, I would suggest that maybe some of the people in the city that are interested, we can put in touch with the people from Worcester, and they can explain more of the mechanics. But I think Medina, when they were looking at this, I think there's over 200 of these CICs in Ohio now because they've become such a successful vehicle to enhance the development.
After checking a site, PPS public park spaces, they have a template that's been used internationally, and one of their first remarks was that if you put a structure on a waterfront, it creates a permanent barrier between the public and their waterfront. Do you think upgrading that area in the Waterworks Park with the amphitheater, the boardwalk connecting it to Madison Street, upgraded into a public gathering space, and redeveloping the buildings downtown, do you think that's a viable solution? I mean, and also with the lodge, do you think basically the charter fishing, do you think that would have an adverse effect with the existing fishing charters and the existing hotels and condominiums that we have?
Not at all. I couldn't be, not at all. That idea, I'll use restaurants as an example, and Worcester's a perfect example of this. When we open a restaurant there, the other restaurant owners embrace that restaurant because you don't go to the same restaurant every day. And if we are able to market and brand this as a regional destination, you're going to have more people coming here, and those charter people will do better in the long run. Example, when you see a McDonald's, you see a Wendy's and a Burger King next to it. Well, why? I mean, if they want to keep the other ones away, because that synergy brings more people in. And I'm not familiar with the study that you're talking about, creating a barrier. And you certainly can create a barrier. If this was a gated community and very private, but this is going to be an integral part of the downtown area, of the community. And I think that's what's going to make it successful. Just by leaving it open so you can just see the land and see all of the water. You'll still see water in that, but I don't see that as any kind of hindrance or obstruction, I think it's going to bring more people. And by creating a public gathering place with the amphitheater, we would have events there that would bring the community together, whether it's free concerts. Medina has free concerts on their park. We're very lucky in Medina, we have a central park area. Where is that gathering place for your community? This amphitheater can be that gathering place where we bring in entertainment and it's free to the public. So anyways, I don't know, maybe you have some other architectural.
Oh, that's good. Just on the barrier idea, I think you nailed it right on there too. That's our first thing is you should be able to walk straight through all these streets, get to the water, and follow that. Go on the boardwalk all the way around the property, and because it's too valuable to not have that. Whatever you do here, for that not to be the case on the property. And the idea of saying, with the charter fishing and all that, again, like our marina areas, not to compete with any other marinas, to say how can we service this. Our goal is in the end that more people want to come up here because they hear about it on there and say, okay, maybe I don't want to spend a week there, but I do want to come up there, and they find someplace else that they can stay at, or maybe there's a price point that they're trying to hit and say, I want to be part of this whole region. The marketing isn't going to be. The marketing is the region of Port Clinton itself. I mean, it's in a broad sense of the region. So any of the events that we're doing, it's not, it's not the Harborfront festival, it's named after this particular facility. It's still Port Clinton. Everything is still based off of Port Clinton. And if there's a price point somebody's trying to hit, and they said, hey, maybe I can't afford this, or maybe I can afford more, or whatever, that just opens the door for everything else in here. If the region is marketed, more people will be here.
Mr. Copeland?
Thank you for coming, Mike.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to ask about one of the things that you have under financing, and it says here that you are willing to purchase the 14 acres. I always understood that would never be for sale and that the city would always own that. I'm interested to find out if that's a deal breaker. And also, I'm interested if you would be maybe interested in a 100-year lease or some kind of private public partnership that we do have in the state of Ohio.
Yeah, I'm receptive to all those ideas. As soon as you mention that, we would certainly look at that, leasing it or a partnership, a public-private partnership. That's what we did in our Worcester project that I talked about with the condominiums and this most recent project. We're open to exploring whatever makes the most sense for all parties. We're just more interested in doing this. We don't need to own it. We don't need to. So we're very open. I guess to answer your question, very receptive to whatever's going to make the most sense.
That's good to hear.
Mr. Copeland, did you?
Have you already done any kind of research that you've concluded a fishing lodge would be successful?
The extent of my, well, I've been doing this for 25 years now. And I always share this because as I tell people this, I never went to college. And I think I've developed everybody talks about these studies. And I think the city here, I think the mayor was telling me they've done how many studies and spent $800,000 on studies. Everything I've done has been affected by instincts and a gut feeling, just as I talked about the people. You can draw up all the contracts, and it's good to have contracts so people don't forget what's supposed to be done. But if you're doing business with somebody that's not reputable, it doesn't matter what the contract says, you're going to have problems. And over the years, I think because I don't have a formal education, I've learned other ways to be successful. And one of the ways I've learned to be successful is becoming a pretty good judge of people and situations. And that's what I recognize about Port Clinton. All the opportunities that are here that could be capitalized on for everybody's benefit. So, have we done any formal studies? No. People that do a lot of studies that you've done, they haven't led to anything. So, I don't know if that's the answer you wanted, but that's...
No, that's fine. That's fine.
That's what it is.
In that overview, it shows the lodge. You didn't go into much detail about the other buildings. There's obviously other buildings that are there. Any detail on that?
No, again, just a concept of what we think would bring people here. Just as I mentioned in Worcester, one of the things that I think has been one of the most successful components of our Worcester development has been getting people to live in the downtown. Well, that equates to getting more people living in this Port Clinton, right, in this area. Now, living there, they're living here for a week at a time or 2 weeks at a time, but you got fresh people coming in all the time that are going to bring disposable dollars that will spend in the stores and the other businesses in town. So I think it's important that we create a place where we can have people staying as to what they're going to look like. I think that's the kind of input that will be developed as we work with the city council and as we work with community leaders here and members of the community as to what's going to work best.
That's exactly. We don't know. When I mentioned earlier, we might have 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms. They might be, maybe there are some that are detached because that's a market for somebody who says that's what they're looking for. But we don't know that part yet.
Would the lodge itself? I mean, where would the lodge be in like your phases of development? Where would you consider that part going in?
I think that's an early part of it. I think that's going to be kind of the catalyst to start marketing and having that as part of this. I think that's an early component. I think that's one of the first things we would look at doing. We'd be looking at acquiring some of the buildings in the downtown to start renovating the buildings so they start looking good, because that's important that the downtown starts looking good. But then we also have to have this other component, and I think the lodge would be where we would start, because that'll create the most interest and give us the greatest marketing tools.
You may have already kind of answered this in response to the earlier question from Mark, but the other buildings that are represented in the conceptual drawing, those are the detached 2-story lofts with garages that people who are staying, that would be people who are staying there weekly, monthly, or timeshare, in addition to the rooms that you have at the lodge itself. That's what you're thinking of?
Yes, I guess ownership of those as condominiums. We haven't really narrowed it down. I just think it's important that we create space to have people staying. The more people staying, the more dollars that'll be in the community.
Okay.
So.
Another question is, the city has looked at other developers in the past, several years ago, not since the economy crashed prior to that. But I'm wondering, since we saw what you've done in downtown Worcester and how beautiful that was, if, say, the city were to look at other developers, would you still be interested in investing downtown if you